When Spain won their first and to date their only World Cup crown back in 2010, 7 of their starting 11 that beat the Netherlands 1-0 in Johannesburg in the final were contracted to Barcelona. The influence of that great Barca team upon Spain's dominance from 2008 to 2012 is widely recognised, despite the fact that there were only actually 3 Barca players in Spain's Euro 2008 squad, but it is not a totally unique phenomenon. The first globally dominant national team, Uruguay, had a core of players from domestic giants Nacional, including 9 of their 22-man squad when they won the inaugural 1930 World Cup. Meanwhile, over on these shores, when England beat the world champions Italy in 1934, in a match that the national press branded the real World Cup, a record 7 of the 3-line starting 11 played for Arsenal. I know, this is all fascinating stuff and the type of knowledge that might prompt you to double check that you're subscribed to HITC7s, which is undoubtedly the finest YouTube channel in all the land. But today's video brings us right up to the modern day. I wanted to know which national teams are most dominated by players from a single club right now, and following some frantic research and a little bit of help from those of you who follow the channel on Twitter, I think I've got there. The top 7 have been selected and ordered by virtue of the percentage of their most recent squads that play for a single club. Portugal, for example, and just to give you some context, have 5 Wolves players in their current 26-man squad, giving them a percentage of 19.23. But is that enough to make the top 7? We'll soon find out. Here are 7 national teams that are dominated by players from a single club. Bangladesh, 39%. As you can see, Portugal never stood a chance, with roughly half the number of Wolves players they'd need to be in with a shout of making this 7. There are actually 4 national teams in which 39% of their most recent or current squad come from a single club, including Gibraltar and Uzbekistan, so to settle this one, I had to look at the percentage of players from a single club that have made their squads across the last 12 months as a whole. For Bangladesh, that figure is 29%, the highest of the 4, meaning they take 7th place in this video. The 8th most populous nation on Earth, and the largest in this 7 in terms of population, Bangladesh, is home to a whopping 163 million people. Whilst cricket is the nation's most popular sport, football does enjoy a smaller but passionate following, and I can testify to that since this channel gets more views in Bangladesh than it does in Belgium or Brazil. The club which dominates the Bangladeshi national team is the Bashundhara Kings, who are a bit like a Bangladeshi PSG. Founded only 7 short years ago, the Kings are bankrolled by the Bashundhara Group, who are one of the nation's largest companies, and have an owner worth an estimated $500 million. They only joined Bangladesh's league system in 2017, but the club quickly set about signing some of the nation's finest players, and they won a top-flight title in only their 2nd season in existence. 9 of Bangladesh's most recent 23-man squad play for the Bashundhara Kings, so they get us started. Qatar, 40%. Staying in Asia, we go from an enormously populated nation to one with fewer inhabitants than Greater Manchester. Hosts of the upcoming 2022 World Cup, an enormous amount of investment has been put into Qatari football, and I don't just mean in the form of bungs to FIFA to ensure that they actually won that bid to host the finals. With the highest GDP per capita of any country on Earth, based almost exclusively on the nation's exporting of petroleum and gas, which account for 85% of Qatar's exports, the tiny oil-rich Middle Eastern state has cash to burn. As well as infrastructure ahead of the 2022 World Cup, Qatar has chosen to invest plenty of that cash into its young players, training facilities, and domestic league. You'll find the likes of Santi Cazorla, Hector Moreno and Mehdi Benatia in the Qatar Stars League these days, as well as Slavisa Jokanovic and Xavi Hernandez on the touchlines, and Qatar's investment has started to pay dividends. The national team won their first major piece of silverware at the 2019 Asian Cup, a tournament they went into with 9 Al Sadd players in their squad. That figure rose to 10 of a possible 25 in Qatar's most recent squad for the nation's friendly against Ghana yesterday, and Qatar's defence in particular is almost entirely made up of Al Sadd players. Al Sadd are Qatar's most successful club, coached currently by Xavi. They have won a record 14 domestic league titles, in addition to being Qatar's only winners of the AFC Champions League. Malaysia, 42%. Like a lot of teams in this 7, Malaysia have never qualified for the World Cup. They are currently well placed to at least make the 3rd round in terms of the qualifiers for the 2022 World Cup, and if they were to pull off a miraculous qualification success, they would largely have the players of Johor Darul Ta'zim, better known as JDT, to thank. Owned by royalty, which always seems a tad unfair, JDT is 70% owned by the state of Johore's crown prince and first in line to the throne, Tunku Ismail Idris, and 30% owned by the UAE-based Royal Football Fund, who also have associations with Schalke, Manchester City, and Crystal Palace. JDT aren't short of a bob or two then, and consequently, the club has become rather successful, winning 6 straight league titles since 2014. JDT's team is essentially the Malaysian national team, accompanied by a trio of South Americans. Oddly, not only are 11 of Malaysia's most recent 26-man squad contracted to JDT, one of them has barely played for the club. 22-year-old goalkeeper Haziq Nadzil, who must be the shortest goalkeeper in international football at just 5 feet and 5.5 inches tall, has only ever made 4 first-team league appearances for JDT and plays primarily for the club's reserves. Such is the strength of the club's squad, or the weakness of Malaysia's international squad, depending upon which way you want to spin it, he is still a full international. 11 out of 26 gives Malaysia a one-club bias of just over 42%, which is enough to earn them a spot in 5th. Tajikistan, 43%. Beating Malaysia into 4th place by a whisker, there's a strong Asian influence upon the early parts of this 7, although Tajikistan is the last Asian national team to feature. Tajikistan is probably one of the least well-known or understood nations in the entire world, or among us in the West at least, and the nation's football team has never really put the country in the spotlight. A mountainous landlocked nation that is larger in landmass than England, but not nearly as populated, Tajikistan is a former Soviet state that has been under the de facto dictatorship of President Emomali Rahmon essentially ever since gaining independence in 1991. Tajikistan's most recent squad is made up almost entirely of domestic players, with the exception of a few players who play in neighbouring Uzbekistan and one player from Indian outfit Mohun Bagan. Of those domestic players, no team has more than 2 players in the national team squad, with the exception of Istiklal, who have a whopping 10 representatives within a squad of just 23. It might not surprise you to know that Istiklal were founded by President Rahmon's son and likely successor, Rustaman Emomali, in 2007, who proceeded to name himself as the club's captain and centre-forward. Istiklal famously received some very favourable decisions from referees, but you'd best not complain because the president is famously authoritarian. Istiklal have won 9 of the last 11 Tajik top flight titles, and I'm feeling like they could make for an interesting documentary video. Estonia, 46%. Portugal might not quite cut the mustard with a measly 19%, but over in the Baltics, Estonia ensure that Europe doesn't go without representation in this 7. Most of you could probably name one Estonian international, namely their captain Ragnar Klavan. Meanwhile, Arsenal fans might know of their academy goalkeeper Carl Jakob Hein, and the odd MLS fan might be aware of DC United's Erik Sorga. By and large though, there aren't too many big names in the Estonia squad, and that is reflected in their FIFA World Ranking of 108th. Estonia have never qualified for a World Cup or a European Championship, and they currently sit last in their UEFA Nations League C group. Apologies to any Estonian subscribers, I'm not painting a particularly positive picture here, am I? If it makes you feel any better, whilst your football team may be rubbish, I'd far rather live in Estonia than Tajikistan, where human rights aren't quite so freely trodden on. Estonia's struggling national team is absolutely dominated by players from a single club, and that club is FC Flora, who play at the fabulously named A. Le Coq Arena, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing wrong, which is named after the A. Le Coq Brewery, which is also home to Estonia's national team. Almost half of the national team play at the same venue at club and international level then, since 11 of Estonia's current 24-man squad play for Flora. Flora are Estonia's most successful club, having won 12 league titles since their foundation, which came just before the fall of the Soviet Union. Papua New Guinea, 52%. The second largest island on Earth, behind only Greenland, much like Greenland in fact, the island of New Guinea isn't really renowned for its footballing prowess. Divided into 2 separate nation states owing to its colonial past, Papua New Guinea is the independent state that occupies the east of the nation, meanwhile the west half is Indonesia. It is often joked or remarked that the dodgy line that separates East and West New Guinea was because an imperialist hit their finger whilst drawing a line through the nation with a ruler. But the truth is that the C-shaped part of the border is just the border following the trail of the Fly River. Also owing to its colonial past, primarily the British rule of East Guinea, rugby league is the island's most popular sport. There is a passion for football among some parts of Papua New Guinea's population, with around 20,000 active participants, and the country has an 8-team semi-professional top flight that was established in 2006. Since the league's creation, only 2 teams have won the league title, Hikari United and Ley City, and between them, they account for 74% of PNG's current national team. We are only interested in single teams though, in which case it's Hikari United who rule the roost with an incredible 12 players in the current PNG squad, accounting for more than 50% of the national team squad. Hikari United are Papua New Guinea's most successful club with 8 league titles, albeit none since 2014, and up until 2019 they were the only club from outside of Australia or New Zealand to have won the OFC Champions League. Tonga, 55%. If we're being honest with each other, I don't talk nearly as much about the Tonga national team on this channel as I really ought to. In fact, other than my videos about the best footballer from every country on Earth and every country in Oceania, I'm not sure I've talked about them at all. Ranked 203rd in FIFA's world rankings, there are only 7 national teams worse than Tonga on Earth right now, according to FIFA's metrics at least. That isn't particularly surprising, since Tonga is a Polynesian archipelago made up of 169 islands, only 36 of which are inhabited, with a total population of just 103,000, which makes it smaller in terms of population than the city of Carlisle. What's more, like most oceanic nations, football isn't Tonga's most popular sport, with that title going to rugby union, where Tonga has a much more favourable world ranking of 27th. There are actually only 7 teams in Tonga's top flight, known as the Tonga Major League, which contains a mixture of amateur and semi-professional clubs. The reigning champions, Veitongo FC, who hail from Tonga's capital of Nuku'alofa, absolutely dominate Tonga's national team. Of the 20 players named in Tonga's most recent squad, in 2019, 11 of them play for Veitongo. In addition to that fact, 3 of them are currently without a club, so of those actually playing for a team, a whopping 65% play for just a single club. It's a level of national team dominance unrivaled anywhere else in the world, as far as my research and the help of all you lovely people on Twitter can tell, and for that reason, the mighty Tongans take top spot. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all as ever for watching, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC summons. Oh, and before I leave you, if you happen to be a Liverpool fan or just someone who has an interest in the club, there's another channel that's part of the HITC family called Rousing the Cop that's just started out, and there should be some interviews with the likes of Emil Heskey over on there, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, feel free to give it a quick look. That's all from me, peace and love and all that jazz, and I hope you all have a brilliant day.